It's a beautiful day today and a beautiful day for some entitled people. Not only do I have a compilation today, but I'm also going to do a short episode at the start. So there is going to be some news stories in this episode and also the last 5 or 6 episodes of Entitled People. So yeah, it's going to be a whole bunch of fun and I hope you guys are excited. And let's get into it. Enjoy, guys. An entitled tourist gets mad because I didn't care that she was American. My dad runs a local tourist group in my town, and on the weekends I usually help out if I'm not doing anything. My job is mainly to interact with customers and answer questions and explain the local rules, and just make sure that they don't do anything stupid that'll upset the locals. I do quite like talking to the people while traveling to a destination. So anyway, last weekend I went with my dad to help. We stopped at the hostel to pick up our group, and I was helping the people on the bus, and this lady and her family stepped forward, and I greeted them, and the lady said that we were from the States. The way that she announced it, it was like she expected me to clap or get excited, but I just said, "That's cool," and I asked her to please get on. She seemed offended, but didn't say anything, and when everybody was seated, we left. The lady proceeded to brag loudly about America and why it's better than my country, and kept looking at me whenever she made a comment. She was making everybody uncomfortable. I just decided to ignore her and speak to everybody else. One of her kids apologized for her obnoxious behavior when she was distracted at a site that we were at. It's terrible when a kid has to apologize for a grown adult's horrible behavior. The rest of the day did go good, with her occasionally saying something about America, but she went quiet towards the end. I guess she realized I didn't really care, or maybe it's because the others in the group, including her own family and fellow Americans, were avoiding her and looked embarrassed to be with her. But yeah, that's my entitled story. Side note, not hating on American tourists, most are quite respectful. Loud, but respectful. Yeah, right, that's so interesting. Like, why would you care? That's such a funny way to act. Like, oh, I'm from America. Round of applause. And also, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with America, but that's such a weird way to be acting. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from, acting like that is super strange. There's a comment here that says, "Just for the record, we don't like those people back here either." Story number 2. Sister-in-law offended that she wasn't informed on my pregnancy. I got pregnant in November. Previous to this, I had a very difficult miscarriage, so this time me around, I decided not to tell anybody of the pregnancy until I was 12 weeks along. A couple of times during those initial 12 weeks, sister-in-law would ask me point blank if I was pregnant. I always tried to politely brush it off and just hold my belly and say that I love food, implying that I'm just fat. Once 12 weeks did roll around, my husband and I told my parents and his parents. I guess his parents told his sister, but that didn't bother me too much. I figure it's past 12 weeks, so it's not a secret. And sister-in-law had been pregnant before, so she knows how private these things can be. Well, apparently I was wrong. My in-laws had a gathering at my husband's grandmother's house, and several times sister-in-law brings up how I'm pregnant and she called it. At one point she called me a liar because I didn't confirm with her when she asked me point blank. I just kept on looking away and people were giving her weird looks, but not confronting her. Nobody was really even speaking to her. She was only talking loudly to herself, and she just didn't drop the subject. So I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Why are you so obsessed with my uterus? Seems a bit weird." And she got offended and called me a liar again for not confirming with her when she asked point blank. I looked at her again and said, "Asking if somebody is pregnant is a really rude question. I don't know why you think it's appropriate, but of course, if you always want to be the first to know, I can text you post-coitally every time I have sex with your brother." Oh my god. That way you can have the astrology sign of the future baby figured out. OP, that is so funny. I'm so happy you said that. She looked at me disgusted and just kept saying that it's wrong to lie, and my husband and I and my toddler left. I burst into tears the second that we left, but my husband was completely on my side. His mum even called me the next day to say that she spoke to sister-in-law to say that she was inappropriate. Sister-in-law now refuses to look at me for any family functions. Easier for me. That's so wild. I'm happy that you said that though, OP. Yeah, oh no, you're not looking at me anymore. What a terrible situation. What do I have to do to earn back your respect? Yeah, like this comment says, "I love it when the trash takes itself out." 100%. And also this comment, I'd point out to sister-in-law that not only is it a rude question with history, but asking somebody if they're pregnant deprives the parents of the opportunity to announce their news the way that they want to announce it. So yeah, shut it down the first time. Or say, "No, why are you?" Honestly, there are a lot of ways to handle this, but sister-in-law does not have to be the first to know. Somebody needs to explain to sister-in-law why this is not an "I called it" situation. Can somebody be assigned to ask her if she's pregnant every get-together? Yeah, that's right. Okay, I've got time for one more, and then it's compilation time. You're prioritizing a dog over my baby boy. I recently flew out of the country for studies with my assistant's dog. In the EU, sometimes you get a free seat for your dog to have their own space in the feet compartment. I got a priority boarding, so when economy started to board, I was already seated, and my dog was already settled down. Cue the entitled parent. "Excuse me, is that seat free?" Me, "Unfortunately, no." Entitled parent, "But nobody is seated there. Can you move the bag so my boy can have it, me. I was given that seat for my assistant's dog to use. I'm sorry I can't give the seat away. Entitled parent. Unbelievable, you're prioritizing a dog over my baby boy? Yeah, okay. At this point, a flight attendant checked what was the commotion. Entitled parent was escorted to their seats. They kept on fussing the entire 2-hour flight and complaining about how people hate children now. Oh my god. How annoying can you be? The flight was not overbooked. In a matter of fact, it wasn't even a full one. The baby boy was about 10 to 12 years old, and from what I saw, the entire family was seated together, but didn't have a window seat. Oh my god, that's so frustrating. Like the top comment says, you're prioritizing a dog over my baby boy? Yes I am. Thank you for understanding. If only they did understand. That is so unbelievably frustrating, OP. And yeah, that's all the time I've got for today. I hope you guys enjoy the compilation. See you tomorrow, guys. My uncle's draining my 100-year-old grandfather's bank account dry every single month. For some background, my maternal grandfather had 2 children, my mum and my uncle. Grandma died 30 plus years ago. Mum died 3 years ago. Up until last year, Grandpa lived with my drug addict uncle in an apartment in a suburb of my city. When my uncle passed out while standing up and hurt his hip so badly that he had to go to the hospital for surgery and rehab almost 2 years ago, my siblings and I realized just how bad Grandpa's living conditions in that cesspool of an apartment were. The heavily blood-stained bed sheets alone would be enough to make you bath. It took me a few months due to my own living situation, but I was able to move Grandpa in with me last year. We had to strip him down and change him into brand new clothes without letting them touch any surface, have him walk barefoot to the car, and bring nothing with him but his walker, wallet, phone, charger, and glasses case. So far, it appears we avoided bringing any bed bugs. My uncle didn't want me to, of course, but what was he gonna do? Any complaint or call he tried to make would result in somebody from some agency seeing his apartment, and then him getting evicted at best and arrested at worst. Grandpa was in such bad shape, I was 100% sure all I could do was let him spend his last few days or weeks in a clean, pleasant environment. Instead, he went from a size medium to a size extra large, celebrated his 100th birthday, and is still going strong. At my uncle's, he always claimed that he wasn't hungry, but now that nobody was telling him they couldn't afford food, he had a 100% normal appetite, mostly for pudding, but he's under doctor's orders to eat whatever he wants. I bought him a bed, mattress, and clothes, 2 whole wardrobes when he gained weight from actually being able to eat, things to store them in, a comfy chair, and a table. He's still using the Android phone I got him a few weeks after Mum died, since he couldn't borrow hers anymore. He can never remember how to text or make calls, but he can answer calls and loves to surf the web. It's on my plan and I pay the whole bill. The cable and internet had been shut off at the apartment for months, so it upgraded to an unlimited data plan, and it had been his only source of entertainment there. I don't take any money from him for utilities or any other household expenses. My roommate allowed him to use a mini fridge, nightstand, and 2 lamps that he wasn't using. My brother bought him a TV and bought over an entertainment center from his garage to display it. The grandkids and great-grandkids are able to come and visit. Nobody but me could even bear to set foot in that filthy apartment, even before we realized how severe the conditions were. No way could we subject children to it. We've had 2 big parties for his 100th birthday and Father's Day. We have 4 cats here who he loves to receive visits from during the day. I did register him to vote at this address, and I ordered him a mail-in ballot box every primary and general election. I was able to get him set up with the VA's home care program, so VA doctors come give him checkups and give him vaccines and draw his blood for testing, etc. All here at home, something that my uncle never could have done, even if he had the energy to be aware of it, because he couldn't let medical personnel see the filth that he was living in. A social worker came to meet with him and got his wishes regarding care and end of life on the record. They have a home health aide come 3 different times a week to do bathing, shaving, etc. and also connected us with a podiatrist who makes house calls for the elderly for nail care. Yeah, old people's nails are really incredibly thick and stiff, and they can't just be clipped the way that we do ours. But I digress. So his toenails are no longer sharp and gnarly. In short, his life and health are a million times better and happier here. My sister, a medical assistant, regularly texts me thanking me for taking him in, so he wouldn't end up in the nursing home she sees on the job. It was around Father's Day this year that my dad voiced what I'd been feeling for a while, but I never said aloud or let myself fully consciously think that I saved his life. Okay, story time. My uncle handed over Grandpa's debit card when we moved him out. He must have known that I'd just apply him for a new one if he didn't. I'd snagged a bank statement from the apartment in the weeks leading up to him moving out, so I had Grandpa's account number, and Grandpa knows his own social security number. So with his consent and participation, I set up mobile banking for his account on my phone so I can monitor his balance, and when he gets his social security and war pension deposits, most expenses are paying for meds online, Instacart orders, and $300 a month to a debt collector, because of course he just gave my mum his credit card a few years before she literally drank herself to death, and nobody was making payments on it for years. We got the letter about that not long after I filed his change of address. The debt was in his name, and I didn't want to deal with the headache of them continuing continuing to come after him while he was alive or after he died. So I set up a monthly payment plan online. It'll be paid off in 3 months. My uncle had also let Grandpa's medical bills go unpaid for a while and had eventually signed up for a tiny monthly payment plan for that because paying for it all at once would have meant less money for my uncle to take at the time. I paid off the balance all at once. Naturally, my uncle took all of his money when Grandpa lived with him. The first month after we moved him out, my uncle tried to tell me that Grandpa still owed him half the rent every single month because his name was on the lease. I believed him, but I called the manager at the number listed in their lobby and I asked when their lease was up, and I shared the story of how I had to move him out because my uncle could no longer care for him. The manager was confused. Grandpa's name wasn't even on the lease, only my uncle's. Oh, you don't say. My uncle never responded to my text mocking him for such a stupid lie, but just because Grandpa was out from under his roof didn't mean the request for money had stopped. For one, my uncle had already entered Grandpa's debit card in the Grubhub app on his phone, so he still often uses it to order Grubhub several times a month. Was doing it almost daily before I lost my temper over it via text. They both have Cash App on their phone, and while Grandpa doesn't know how to use it, when my uncle asks him for money, Grandpa always consents, so I have to send it or Grandpa would get beyond distressed and upset. Grandpa doesn't have dementia or anything. For 100, his mental faculties are incredible. He can't remember what day it is and will ask the same question 3 different times in 1 minute, but he recognizes everybody. He can read and watch TV and comprehend it all, tell you what he needs and except for some repeating, have completely normal conversations, but he's always been a sucker when my leech of a mum and uncle ask for money. He's incapable of saying no, and if I just refuse to let him do it or refuse to let him talk to my uncle, like blocked his number or something, it would just upset him. So my uncle keeps on requesting money daily starting halfway through every single month, and he always gets it. Tonight he agreed to give my uncle $56. Too bad, it's the end of the month and he's broke, and so am I. I really am. I get paid in 2 days. I didn't tell Grandpa that he's broke because he wouldn't understand why and he would panic, but I did break down all expenses he had this month, and I texted the amounts to my uncle to prove that he was broke and that it wasn't because I'm taking money from him. Between Grubhub and his constant requests for money, my uncle took $789 this month alone. From the 100-year-old father he almost neglected literally to death, I took $35 for 2 Uber rides so I could get home faster to make him dinner on 2 days. Grandpa has told me my money's your money and to use it how I want because I take care of him. I would never do that, but I occasionally use it for Uber rides home. Only if I'm going home to do chores or make dinner, never for anything fun. And what did my uncle respond? That I should never have set up a payment plan for the debt from the unpaid credit card bill. They would never go after a 100-year-old man. Yeah, that's the issue. I told him to take it up with them or mum, and he didn't reply. Never pay any debt is my uncle's philosophy of life. When an electric bill came when he was in the hospital, he told me to just send them $50 so they won't turn the lights off. I paid the whole $200 plus balance from Grandpa's card because I didn't trust that it worked that way, and the thought of Grandpa being alone in the apartment when the power went out bothered me a lot more than him having less money in his account for my uncle to take. I shared the numbers with my sisters and dad. They agreed that it's unconscionable, but they also have no idea how to stop it because Grandpa just won't say no, and the only alternative is upsetting him by refusing to let him keep giving the money. Would it be worth it? Would it be safe for his health? We're not afraid of our uncle getting the law involved. Again, getting any outsiders involved in his business is a risk that he cannot take, no matter what, but we're afraid of the effect it would have on Grandpa. We currently get along great. If he starts seeing me as an enemy or lashing out at me, our living arrangement would be a disaster. That seems to be the only way to stop his son from bleeding him dry. And despite our rage over his son using him this way to fund his drug habit, nobody's suggesting that we risk that. And people say that your kids will take care of you in your old age. Huh? Oh, that's so sad. But good on you for doing everything you have done for them, OP. Such an awful situation, but you made it so much better. The next one is called Entitled Boss Fires Me, but Still Wants to Be Friends. It's even worse than the title. I've been this family's nanny for 3+ years. Youngest child is only 6. I took 6 days off at their insistence because I was having a miscarriage. The day before I was due to return, I got told, "We've actually managed without you, so could you just work tomorrow and then we don't need you anymore, but we can still be friends and meet up." Oh, that's so awful. I worked that day, picked up my stuff, dropped off their keys. By the time I'd driven home, she'd blown up my phone with messages saying, "I'm upset too, you know." I blocked her number. She's now harassing my husband. Sorry, honey, you don't get to fire somebody during one of the most traumatic moments of their life and then expect them to stay friends with you. Nor will I come running back when you realize you have no childcare. Oh, that's disgusting. So sorry you had to deal with this, OP. So revolting. And the audacity. Like, oh yeah, I'd love to stay friends with you because you're definitely acting like a friend. Ew. The top comment says, "What do you bet they start calling you to come back the minute their kid gets sick or difficult?" No, your former employee knew that she was being horrible, and she's only trying to make herself feel better by still offering friendship as the lady tries to wrench the knife that she stabbed you with out of your spine. I'm so sorry for your loss. Yeah, same here, OP. OP, and that's 100% right. They were only doing it to try to make themselves feel better. And if that's a friend, you don't need a friend like this. The next one is called Dear Parents, Your Vacation is Not Your Nanny's Vacation. My cousin, let's call her Amy. She currently is a nanny for a new family and it's going well. She made the mistake of not setting boundaries with the first family. When she was hired for the first job, she was told the family takes a vacation every single year to the beach and Disney World in Florida and how beautiful it is and how lucky she'll be to be able to go. My cousin said that her idea of a vacation would be to go skiing, noting the fact that her idea for vacation is not theirs. So in August, the parents were besides themselves because Amy had not committed to going on vacation with them. The father said to her via email something along the lines of she should feel honored to be able to get a free trip to Disney World and how expensive it is and she'll never be able to afford to go on her own, like she even wanted to go. Here's the problem the family don't seem to understand. This is your vacation, not your nanny's. This family has 4 kids, ages 3, 6, 8, and 12, and she works her ass off when she has them. My cousin said she was having panic attacks thinking about trying to keep 4 kids safe at Disney World and how the parents are useless when she's around, save for times when the mother will want her to go to family outings and the agreement is they work as a team. The family tried to throw in her face that her airfare and travel would be paid for, so she would be expected to take a pay cut. There's not much more to this story, but I'm so proud of my cousin for refusing to go and letting the family know it's a vacation for them and not her. Families who can afford a traveling nanny, let alone a nanny, is definitely considered a luxury to most. You need that nanny to go on vacation with you more than the nanny wants to go. So what if, God forbid, the nanny may end up enjoying herself one night? You should want your nanny to enjoy herself even if one night, so she'll go again next year, and stop with the culty your family. That only leads to manipulation. Your nanny is your nanny. Wow, the top comment is so sad. I remember one time at Disneyland, I saw this couple with their kids and a nanny, and when one of the kids got scared, the mother went to comfort the child, but the child completely ignored her and went to the nanny. That was so sad. Oh, that is sad. But yeah, how bloody frustrating. Like, oh yeah, a wonderful vacation where, like they said, they're having panic attacks about looking after their kids. Oh yeah, that's going to be fun for Amy, isn't it? The bloody audacity. And also they have the audacity to say that Amy should take a pay cut. I almost forgot about that part. Yeah, that's so wild. The next one is called Entitled Karen Didn't Want Me to Use the Bathroom. Granny yells at her. So my husband, 34 male, and I, 36 female, were coming back from upstate New York. We went to see my brother who's like 4 hours away from us. It was a long trip and I have kidney issues due to my lupus, so I rushed to the bathroom when we got to the Port Authority. For info, I'm short, chubby, and I use a walker. So when I got to the bathroom, I had no stalls to go to but one. There were lots of stalls. However, I could only use the disabled person stall because it was the only one big enough for my walker. So I waited outside of the stall for a while and then I knocked when it got to the 10-minute point. The woman huffed and said, "Use the other stall, biatch." I tell her I can't because I'm disabled. The lady gets up. This woman grumbled and I heard her flush twice. The toilets are automatic, so I'm guessing she was getting up, and then flushed again before she fully got up. She walks out of the stall and she was bigger than me in height and weight. She had long green cornrows and name brand everything, wearing a tracksuit. She looked mad. I really couldn't wait anymore though, so I rushed by to go to the bathroom. I was quick, but what I didn't expect was the lady banging on the stall telling me to get the F out. She did this over and over. I tell her I'm almost done, and when I walk out, it was the same woman. She says, "You stepped on my shoe. Do you know how much this is? More than 10 of your cart. If I see you again, I'll make sure that you're a paraplegic." Oh my God. Not a typo, this is how she said it. I'm freaking out because I think this crazy lady is going to kill me for leaving a tiny mark on her shoe. This is when I hear, "Biatch, shut your fat ass up. You ain't no thug." This woman then darts her eyes to a 4'11" granny. The woman had to be 80 something, but this granny was tough. This girl looked upset. The granny then looks at me and says, "Baby, are you okay?" I nod and she smiles. She then drags the larger woman out. I'm guessing this was her grandma because they look similar and she had the fear of God in her eyes. That was a weird bathroom trip, but one I won't forget. Wow, shout out to the grandma. Yeah, like this comment says, "Go granny, go." It's nice to see a Karen get put in their place. Yeah, it really is. Very satisfying. The next one is called My Entitled Boss Laid Me Off for refusing to come in on my weekend off. I've been in retail since 2009, and my now last job I was there since 2014. I won't go into huge details about the work environment. A lot of that can be seen on my profile of my other job posts, but to summarize, in the whole time I was there, my boss, despite saying that family time matters, would always screw over my personal time off. When I worked directly under him, a lot of times he would cancel my days off because he was taking a trip somewhere. Coupled with that, childish and immature co-workers who threw tantrums and gave silent treatments. I was at the end of my rope. My job mainly consisted of delivering building material. I had a certain certificate to operate a certain type of delivery truck. The certification was going to expire at the end of the year. About a week or so into January, HR came to do a review with me. During the review, they mentioned they're holding a course to revalidate the certification for everybody in the company in 2 weeks. They said, it's on your weekend off, but are you able to attend? I looked at my calendar and I said I had plans booked that day, so it doesn't work to my schedule. The company wanted to get everybody done at once. That way they save money on group training. HR just said, see what you can do to attend. And I said that my plans were set in stone and things were left at that. About a week before the course, HR emailed me again saying that this course is critical for my job, so do try to attend. I replied that it doesn't work for my schedule, that I'd be happy to do it any other day, but this is going on during my weekend off where I made plans well in advance, so it doesn't work for my schedule. For a few days, there was nothing else. My boss owns a few stores, and one worker from another store came by who was also going to go to the course. He told me that he'd been making plans with his fiance for the last couple of months, but had to cancel them because they suddenly revealed this training course and had to attend. He wasn't too happy that the plans he made for months had to be cancelled. I said nothing to him. I figured it was his choice if he chose to do that. Then suddenly my boss began phoning me 2 days before the course. I recorded the conversation. Maybe in the future I'll upload it, but for now I'll transcribe what was said. AB will stand for a-hole boss. For some context, earlier that week I got a work truck stuck in the snow and I called a tow truck to help pull me out and I paid for it myself. It'll be important for what happens next, and this is roughly how it went. A-hole boss. Hey OP, HR tells me you're unable to attend the training course. Me, that's correct. I unfortunately made plans in advance, so I can't attend. A-hole boss. After a moment of silence, I need you to get this training done. Me, I understand that, but I made plans well in advance and I can't just cancel them. A-hole boss. Okay, you realize when we notify you 2 weeks in advance, it doesn't mean it's optional. This is mandatory. At this point, I was starting to get mad. Me, I understand that, but I've been planning this weekend since early December. I'll be out a lot of money if I cancel. A-hole boss. What are you doing? Me, that's a private matter. I can't discuss that. A-hole boss. After a moment of silence. How much is that towing bill costing me? Me, I paid for that myself because that was my screw up. A-hole boss. Silent again for a few seconds. Okay, then you're gonna have to do this training on your own time and your own money then. The training itself cost only a few $100s, but by this point I'd had it with my boss. Me, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. A-hole boss. Silent again. This is pretty rich coming from you. Me, well, I'm sorry, but I received no heads up, no communication that this was being planned for that date. I know there were plans to do my training early in December, but never heard anything about it since September or October. A-hole boss. Silence again. OP, I'm not happy right now. Me, well, I'm sorry, but I have a life. I can't just cancel stuff when I make plans on my day off. A-hole boss. Okay, good enough. Bye. Me, bye. So for a week I heard nothing. I continued my job as normal while looking for a new job because I'd had it with my boss. 9 years of all of this, I'd reached my breaking point during that phone call. This boss always screwed me over for my personal time off, and this was the last straw of trying to force me to come in on my scheduled weekend off. And then 1 week after, towards the end of the day, HR showed up. They informed me they were laying me off due to extremely slow season with hopes of having me come back in spring. I said nothing, choosing to leave on a high note, but I knew that it was really their way of firing me without firing me. That way they avoid paying severance, which would have been in the tens of thousands of dollars. I estimate between 10 and 40,000. Unfortunately, I've got no real way of proving it's retaliation. All their paperwork though, I know is a lie. Say that I got laid off for lack of work, etc. The only proof I have is recently I had to contact the insurance provider for my company to get a letter of experience from them. The agent I spoke with said that he recognized my name, saying that my now former employer recently removed me from their insurance coverage. Other than that backhanded move, I'm glad to be out of there. I was unhappy, I was stressed, and I was fed up. I'm using the time to advance my driver's license to have the highest one I can get in my country. If anybody is curious to know what stories in my profile pertain to this company or this boss, feel free to look or message me. I'll tell you which ones they are. Wow, that's so frustrating. What's the point of having time off if it isn't even bloody time off? Oh, that sucks, OP. Do you know who my husband is? This one's something that happened to me over 20 years ago, but for some reason it just popped into my head, and since it fits here, well, here we are. When my now ex-husband was stationed at an Air Force base along the Gulf Coast, I worked in the layaway, customer service, catalog order, gift wrapping department at the back of the base exchange, BX, and I had already been there for over a year. I was well liked by both my co-workers and supervisors. Usually at this department, it's walk in and get what you need, as it's usually not a super busy department. However, beginning not long after Halloween and into the new year, it got horribly busy, and at that point it was required for everybody to pull a number from the ticket dispenser at the entryway to the department. Once the holiday season began, this was absolutely a hard fast rule no matter what. One weekend day we were wall to wall with people, and from the moment that we opened the registers we were busy. It got so bad that we had to call a couple of people over from other departments for the sole purpose of ringing through layaways, so a couple of people in our department could do nothing but gift wrap and grab layaways from the back that were being paid in full. I was at the register that was doing payments only on layaways. Not even PIFs, just payments. I'm waiting on a customer when I happen to glance up and see a woman walk through the entryway and come straight to my register. Didn't grab a number, nothing. Just walked straight up to me and interrupted me with the customer that I was currently assisting. Her, you need to help me immediately. I'm in a rush and I can't wait very long. Me, ma'am, well, I can appreciate that. Everybody here has somewhere else they'd like to be. If you just grab a numbered ticket there. Her, interrupting me. I don't have time for that. You need to assist me now. At this point, I had finished up with the customer that I was helping, and I turned to click on the now being served, which was the number I called out. Number 75. Next customer, please. Her, now turning purple that she's so mad. Excuse me? You need to help me now. Do you know who my husband is? Me. Unless he's number 75, it really doesn't matter. As if this wasn't enough of a mic drop. This is where it gets really good. She's now apoplectic and demands to speak to my manager. Fair enough. Let's go get her from the back where she's pulling PIF layaways and counting cash to be deposited into the main safe because our registers are getting full. Me to supervisor. Mary, this customer walked in, didn't take a number, came right up to my register and demanded that I take care of her ahead of a couple of dozen customers who patiently waited. I asked her to pull a number, but she refused, and then asked me if I knew who her husband was. I should tell you, I told her that unless he was number 75, it didn't really matter. Mary comes out to the registers and walks up to the woman and says, "Ma'am, I'm this employee's supervisor, and she tells me you'd like to talk to me." Entitled customer. Yes, this. My supervisor held up her hand and cut off what the woman was saying. "Ma'am, I'd love to help you right this second, but as you can see, we're really busy. If you could just pull a number, I'll speak with you when it's your turn." At that, Mary turned around and walked back to the back and pulled PIF layaways. I wish I could describe the range of emotions that this customer experienced before she finally turned on her heel and left in a huge huff. Then, to add insult to injury, just as the woman was departing, another customer, I have no idea who, said loud enough for the room to hear, "Get back to us when your husband is more than a lieutenant." Best customer service day ever. Edit, I forgot to mention her husband, who was indeed a lieutenant, came in the next day apologizing for her behavior. Wow, that's so funny. "Do you know who my husband is?" "Yeah, actually, he came in apologizing for your behavior." You handled this so well, OP. It's so cringy when people say stuff like that. Like, "Do you know who my husband is?" Or "Do you know who I am?" Like, no, I've got no idea, and it doesn't matter. The audacity. Story number 2. Entitled customer didn't know that I was more patient than the managers. I work at a college town bowling alley, and most of my co-workers do go to said college or nearby high schools. I'm lucky to have supervisors who let us stick up for ourselves when people are a bit unreasonable. 9 out of 10 times the supervisor will allow us to kick out somebody on a 3-strike basis. A guy and his son came in and were being really rough on the equipment, stepping on our lanes, even chipped a ball after he jumped the gutter. I was new to the job and being nice, and I just kept track of how many times he broke each rule. I informed him of the rules gently every single time he broke one, and the 5th time I talked to him, he goes, "Do you know who my wife is?" Wow. Right after we read the last story, somebody else is using that line. Me, "Your wife's status does not change our company's rules. Step on the lane to bowl like that again and my supervisor will be escorting you out." Entitled customer, "You won't want to do that if you go to the college nearby." Me, "I don't and I didn't." Entitled customer, "She's on the board there." He had a smug look, expecting me to bend over backwards now. Me, "That's nice. If you retrieve your own bowl again or hit our lane or sweep again, you're getting kicked out." Keep in mind, I was still 1 month into this new job. My manager that day was known for her no BS customer policy among the workers, and I was being nice, trying to be the middleman and filtering what my manager said. Entitled customer, "No, I'm not. I paid for an hour. I'm playing for an hour. I'll make sure you lose this job too." Insinuating that I won't be able to attend the local college, which is fine because I didn't like the local college. I shrug and I get my supervisor. Supervisor, "OP told me a bit about the situation." Entitled customer, "Good, I want our wasted time to be refunded, and I want that employee written up for pointlessly bothering me. My wife is on the college board and I can't wait to tell her about this." Supervisor, "You are aware that I was just at the counter, 5 feet away. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Entitled customer, "I paid to bowl. You explained this to my son. His son was like 6. Supervisor, "Right." She knelt to the confused boy. "Your daddy won't follow the rules, so I'm afraid you can't play anymore until he says sorry to the nice lady helping you." Entitled customer got mad and started yelling insults, saying that she wasn't really the supervisor because she looked like she was in high school. She was. Demanded to talk to someone higher despite my supervisor saying she was the highest one on duty. The GM's little sister was working that day and got a video of the whole thing since it was so close to the counter to send to her brother. The general manager came soon after. He's like a year older than me and demanded entitled customer leave. He was no longer welcome there and he hopes his wife does hear about this incident. Entitled customer then called GM a liar, that he was too young to be a GM because he didn't even look 30. He then pulled the "I'm friends with the owner" BS, and that we'll all be fired because of how we handled this. It took threatening police to get him to leave. We told the owner the next day, and as I thought, we banned that guy. He broke lane 16. Yeah, like this comment says, you explain this to my son. Okay, kiddo, your dad's a dingbat. Yeah, that part was so funny. And this comment too, I work with customers. If they don't accept what I say and they ask to speak to my manager, I gleefully jump up and say, okay, but I'm the nice one, and skip away to go get him. And then they say that they should have stuck with me, lol. I love my manager. Yeah, I feel so sorry for people who have to deal with entitled people like this. Story number 3, Mr. Karen loses mind when I won't let his kid ride an exercise bike. I work part-time at a community centre fitness area. Most of the time the people are lovely. We have regulars and it is nice to see them. They work out, they clean up after themselves, they leave. It's great. Some days it gets annoying. The community centre is directly attached to a local high school. The very nice pool often holds high school swim meets and water polo matches and whatnot. To get to the pool observation deck, one must cut through said fitness centre. On a game or a meet day, a lot of people who normally wouldn't have access to our very large expensive gym with super expensive equipment can suddenly be in the building and causing all kinds of trouble. I only mention this because you have to be extra careful to enforce rules on these days in case some stranger decides to try and deadlift 400 pounds and breaks a fibula or something. This was one of those days. Mr. Karen is a fellow I've never seen. No biggie. New member perhaps. Day pass maybe. He has a small child with him. My estimation is the child is 5. The man is in jeans and a sweater. This does seem strange, but who the hell am I to judge what people exercise in? Our rules pretty explicitly state that children cannot use any equipment unless they're above the age of 14. From 8 years old and above, they're welcome to use our track as long as there's a guardian in the building. The man and the kid are on bikes. To be fair, the kid isn't being a twat. That happens a lot too. Kids will run in like psychos and try to use a rower and inevitably squish a finger or drop a weight. So yeah, props to him, I guess. I walk up and I apologize and I tell him the kid can't be on equipment, but he is more than welcome to use the track. Mr. Karen loses his mind. Mr. Karen, why? He's not doing anything. Me, you're right, but it's our rules. I'm sorry. Kids have to be older than 8 to use our track unsupervised, but he can't be on the equipment. Mr. Karen, yelling now. How do you know that he's not 8? Me, looking at him like he's nuts. What? Mr. Karen, you assumed his age. I can do whatever I want. Me, I did assume. I'm sorry. He certainly isn't over 14, so he can't be on the equipment. He asks for my manager, who tells him the same thing and says the classic line, I don't pay $1,000 a year to be a member here for you to tell me what I can and can't do. He's then asking for the Parks and Rec City manager's contact. We give it to him. He tells me to F all the way off and then he leaves. Later, I tell my other boss about this. They go down to registration to see who this dude is. Turns out, not a member. They have no record of it. Probably came in to watch water polo. So then he freaked out and lied to try to get his way. He sucks. Yeah, and so unnecessary too. How bizarre to have a rule that prevents young kids using equipment because they're too small, too physically underdeveloped, and or completely untrained to use safely. How dare you? Yeah, and this comment, there's a certain type of man who you simply can't say no to. If you do, they simply cannot compute it. They've never been told no all the way back to the nursery and they can't seem to handle it. They usually look a bit dumbfounded for a second and then they start to actually shake with rage and they get angry. They shout and demand until they get their way from somebody, and people usually just give in and give them what they want to calm them down, and that's how they get through life, and they usually get what they want. I've seen this so many times in customer service. It's psychotic. Yeah, absolute dingbat behavior. Post number 4, entitled passenger on a flight. I was told this story belonged on this subreddit. This story happened a few years ago, so details might be a little bit hazy. I was returning home from a trip that I cut short due to a family health emergency. The flight was pleasant, but I was in a bad place mentally. I did what I usually do in times like that, and I kept to myself, saying few words. I plugged in my headphones and I started to listen to some podcast during the 2-hour flight. Over the sound of the podcast, I heard somebody speaking loudly in a pretentious, nasally voice. I pulled out my earbuds and I heard a guy arguing with a flight attendant about how he had asked for something several times, but he didn't get it. I didn't really care and I tried to ignore him, but he kept on going, asking the flight attendant for her name and telling her that the airline company must hear about this. I don't remember what he wanted, but it was some kind of drink that they didn't have available for some reason. Wow, getting upset over a drink. I returned to my podcast and I raised the volume. 10 minutes after, by the podcast timer, he was still ranting in his annoyingly pretentious way about professionalism, respect, and giving customers what they want. I switched to some rock music to drown him out, and I saw the captain coming over to talk to him. He was flailing his arms around like spaghetti. Yeah, but I mean, if they don't have the drink, they're not gonna be able to get the drink. You're on an aeroplane, dude. Imagine getting upset about something so silly, especially in public too, where you're upsetting everybody else. My worry about my hospitalized grandma gave way to anger, and I started fantasizing about all the different ways I could shut him up. The captain walked away with a frustrated look on his face, and the flight attendant started serving the other passengers and ignoring his attempts to stir up trouble. I think they got him some alternative drink which he never even touched. We landed and I put my earbuds away to get ready to leave. He was first in line by the airplane door and I was right behind him. The door opened and an airport security guard was standing there to escort him through the tube. I followed, and by the end of the tube a higher ranking guard was waiting for him. He stood blocking the way out, and I saw that the other passengers behind me were fed up with this guy, who never even shut up for more than half of the flight time. He was arguing about how terrible the crew and the service was, and how he never had service this bad. He kept saying that he needs to leave now because his family were waiting for him, or some similar non-reason reason. My anger was starting to boil. Should I shove him? Bang my pulling bag onto his leg? Punch him in the back? Would everybody clap? I had to head straight to the hospital, and everybody behind me had places to go. I've heard many stories about people like him online, across many different channels. Nobody would feel bad for them, but this wasn't only about them, it was also about who I am and what kind of a person I want to be. I took a couple of deep breaths to calm down as he was telling the guards how to do their jobs, and with the most aggressive tone I could come up with despite my stress and exhaustion, I spoke up. Get the F out of my way. That F-bomb was enough to stun him since everybody else was following a code of conduct required by their jobs, and for the first time since I noticed him, he had nothing to say. The guards took advantage of his silence and started to move him away, hopefully to some back office where he'll be delayed for a few hours. I left the airport and I headed home for a quick shower and a change of clothes before going to the hospital. My thoughts kept on going back to that entitled guy and how he thought he could be pretentious and rude with people whose jobs require them to be polite. Politeness never works with them, and sometimes meeting somebody who thinks that they're scum is the wake-up call that they deserve. Yeah, definitely OP. I can't even imagine being in that situation. Like, you're on an aeroplane. You're surrounded by strangers in a confined space. People are probably already kinda tense, and you have this person making a scene for no reason over a drink. Like, how ridiculous. And you have to sit there and listen to it. Yeah, that's so frustrating. Post number 5. Entitled kids harass people to buy candy and soda for them. I was at a local convenience store getting a 6-pack of wine coolers and some tacos and burgers from an in-store restaurant. While I was at the counter ready to pay for the items, a few kids came in. I didn't think much of them until they came up beside me and told the cashier I'd be buying some things. Before I could say anything, the cashier told them that was not happening. While that was happening at the same time, the other kids were harassing other people in the store to get them to buy them something. They refused and continued to refuse when further harassed by the kids. The cashier, who I also know as the owner, demanded them all to leave or else he'll call the police. They all left the store at the threat of police being called. I asked the cashier owner what that was about. He told me those kids were previously banned for harassing other customers last week and attempting to shoplift. I'm a bit confused about what was going on in those kids' brains that day. Yeah, this really reminds me of that Simpsons episode when Marge says kids can be so cruel, and Bart's like, we can?
Kids can be so cruel.
We can? Thanks, Mom.
Okay, story 6. Karen demands her meal for free but gets instant karma instead. This story is about my mother. Yes, she's a mega Karen, and unfortunately I've had to put up with her for most of my life. This happened when I was a teenager, around 15. We went out for dinner at a small local restaurant that did all-you-can-eat buffets. I should mention that my mother has long, thick and curly hair, and she never ties it up. Important for later. We got our dinner and we sat down to eat and all was going well. I was surprised at how well my mum was doing. By this point she should have found something to complain about, and then it happened. She looked down at her plate and said, "Oh my God, look at this. There's a flipping hair in my food." Me, knowing exactly what she was doing, "Mum, that's your hair." "Mum, that's not my hair." The way she was talking was obviously dramatized for effect, and she was beginning to get louder and drawing attention from the other diners. She continued to cause the scene and to get more irritating, drawing more attention to herself and inadvertently me. I wanted to sink into my chair from embarrassment. Not long after she started her fake tantrum, the waitress came over to see what the problem was. "Waitress, how's it all going here? What seems to be the problem?" "Mum, there's a hair in my food." Waitress, okay. Mum, getting furious at the lack of care from the waitress. "Well then, what are you gonna do about it? We deserve to have our meals for free. This is horrible customer service." Waitress, with a smirk across her face, "I'm sorry you're not satisfied with our food. Would you like to speak to the chef?" Mum, looking smug that she thought she won. "Yes, I would." I was confused at this point, not understanding why the waitress didn't seem to care, even though I knew my mum was lying, but it soon became clear why. A few minutes after, a man came out from the back of the store and walked right up to our table, and my mum's face went ghost white and her jaw dropped. The chef was bald. Not balding, but so bald you could see your own reflection on his shiny scalp. "Chef, hi there. How are things this evening? What seems to be the issue?" Mum, "Well, there's a hair in my food." Chef, smiling, "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am, but unless I've miraculously grown a full head of hair on my walk over to your table, you can see that I'm very much bald, and I'm the only chef working tonight. That's clearly not my hair." Mum, silence. "Chef, is that all for now? I need to get back to work." Without waiting for an answer, he turned and walked back to the kitchen, but not before I mouthed sorry to him before he left. I knew better than to say anything to my mum after this, but I had a smile on my face for the rest of the night. Wow, so trying to get everything for free? There's a hair in my food, and I just put it there. Terrible service. Once again, I can't imagine dealing with people like this, and I can't imagine being you, OP. Like, imagine if one of your family members acted like this, and you had to go out and do stuff with them. Oh, that's actually infuriating. Like, oh, mum's making an issue out of nothing again. Yay! Post number 7. Karen outs herself as an office food thief. I work IT volunteer at a small non-profit. We have a kitchen and staff room and supply free coffee, tea, milk, sugar, etc. During the pandemic, all staff were working from home, but for the past few weeks, some staff have been coming back gradually, most for just 1 to 2 days a week, including myself and, unfortunately, Karen. Now, Karen and I have had many run-ins over the years, and suffice to say we don't get along. I don't tolerate her BS. A week or so after going back, Karen sends a condescending email to the office manager, OM, CCing all the staff. In it, she says that while she accepts that the office kitchen had not been stocked while everybody was on lockdown, she's appalled that there's no bread or bagels or yogurt for all the staff that have returned. OM replies, adding CCing all the staff. Karen, as a courtesy to the staff, we provide free coffee, tea, milk, and sugar, all of which have been stocked. We have never provided free bread or bagels or yogurts or any other food. However, staff do keep personal food items in the fridge. Wow, that's so funny. So they've been eating everybody else's food? I can't believe there's nothing in the fridge I can steal. That's so funny. Oh, it seems I've been stealing food, and now everybody knows it. Post number 8. Karen doesn't like people parking in front of her house. So, when I was around 6 years old, I lived with my family in a nice house in a small city in Poland. It was a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts, and pretty much all the neighbors knew each other. There were no sidewalks around the part of the street that I lived at. Only one crappy sidewalk that started on the other side in front of my neighbor's house. It's important to remember that the sidewalk was very old and in bad shape. Still to this day, people are asking the city to fix it. This story is about that neighbor, Karen. She was an older lady. Everybody suspected that she didn't really have anything better to do than gather gossip and disturb everybody, trying to rule the street. Everybody was commenting that if you wanted to get the whole area to know something, you had to tell her that as a secret. Whenever somebody came to visit, they usually parked their car in front of our property, but on bigger meetups like barbecues or parties, people would park in front of our closest neighbors' houses too. That never was an issue. No gates were obstructed and nobody was disturbed. Well, almost. Karen hated when somebody parked in front of her house. She would always run out yelling about how we dared to park our filthy cars on her precious sidewalk. My mother is not somebody that lets somebody yell at her. She had many discussions with Karen about the laws and the rules and stated that she doesn't own anything outside of her fence, which means that the sidewalk is public and anybody can park on it, as long as they leave enough space for a wheelchair to pass. That wasn't enough. Every time somebody would come to us and park their car there, the yelling would start, until one time when my mother's friend, Tomek, came for a coffee during winter. He's a local policeman and his specialty is road law, so my mother tells him about Karen and her behavior regarding the sidewalk. Tomek laughs since that thing was in such bad shape that it can barely be even called a sidewalk. When he was leaving, he assured my mum that he'd step by the next day for a coffee. The next day comes by and I was playing with my brother in the snow. We see a black car pulling over in front of Karen's house, and as the driver gets out, Karen storms out of her house yelling, "You can't park there, this is my sidewalk, get your filthy car off my property." Well, there was Tomek with his full uniform, hat and all, turning around towards Karen as comically as he could. "Excuse me, you tell me that I can't park my car here?" Karen, "Yep, yes." Tomek, "But this is a sidewalk open to the public." Karen, "Yeah, this is my sidewalk." Tomek, "So let me get this straight, this is your sidewalk." Karen, "Yes." Tomek, "And you are the one responsible for taking care of it." Karen proudly, "Well, yes I am. That's why I don't allow anybody to park here." Tomek, "Oh, that's so nice that I found you. Since it is your sidewalk, you're responsible for clearing the snow from it to not create danger for the people walking on it. Since it wasn't plowed, I need to write you a fine for endangering public safety," he says as he pulls out his notebook. Karen, "But no other sidewalks are plowed." Tomek, "Oh, it doesn't matter. The other sidewalks belong to the city. The clearing crew is working on cleaning them. But since this sidewalk is yours, it's your responsibility." Karen, "But I'm old. I can't shovel the snow." Tomek, "Then you need to hire somebody to do that. Of course, if this sidewalk happened to be of public property." Karen, Yeah, it's not mine." Tomek, "But a moment ago you were yelling at me that it was. So what is it? Is it yours or not? Because I don't know if I should fine you now." Karen, "No, it's not mine." Tomek, "Alright, seems like we cleared that up. Now, if you ever harass anybody like you did with me, it could result in a fine. So I recommend you watching out on what you claim to be yours." And then he proceeded to cross the street and enjoy a coffee in our house. Karen never disturbed anybody for parking in front of her house again. She would only stare at people trying to burn holes in their skulls with her sight. Wow, that's so awesome. Spouse's entitled friend insists on staying with us and being chauffeured around everywhere. Whoo boy, I had no idea people could be this unaware. My spouse's childhood friend announced a year ago that they were coming to our country and they intended to stay with us. We tentatively said okay. Recently we found out that my mother requires a significant medical procedure. We'll be hospitalized for a few days to a week and recovering with us after. The three of us live together as roommates with bills split equally. This procedure falls smack dab into the middle of spouse's friend's trip. I told my spouse to tell their friend about the circumstances and that this would severely impact any sightseeing plans that we had, and I'd be out for the duration of the trip between work and taking care of my mum. The friend, despite driving for many years in their home country, didn't want to drive while they were here and expected us to ferry them around. I had hoped that, like most normal people, the friend would pick up on the fact that this is not a good time to visit us and make some sort of alternate arrangements, i.e. drive a car, but instead they said, well, as long as I get to see so-and-so while here, I'm fine. I should explain that my spouse is a very new driver and just got their license a month ago and has little experience driving on freeways. They were and still are terrified of these. I do most of the driving as a result while they're getting comfortable. Yeah, so you're gonna have to do all the driving when the friend comes over? Nah. Said friend arrived on Monday and since then, expected to be picked up from the airport, a 2-hour drive each way, and spouse, the new driver, had to drive in horrific traffic to get them. I was busy with appointments for my mum and work. Did not offer gas money to my spouse for driving all of that way to get them. Expects to be driven to sightsee each day. Again, never offers gas money or pays for anything. When in our house, has the TV up loud in the one room that I enjoy hanging out in, outside of our bedroom. Doesn't pick up after themselves. Has not offered to pay for a single meal. Oh my god, get rid of them. Doesn't even pay for their own meals or drinks or save for one meal. So now we're paying to feed another adult. Should also mention that the friend has money, so it's not even a case of not having money. When taken to sightsee, never says thank you and even complained about one place that my spouse took them to. Oh my god, who is this? Do they not have any common courtesy? They sound like a nightmare. Take super long showers without even asking if we had to use the bathroom before. Does not offer to help with anything in the house. They sound insufferable, and please tell me you said something, OP. You need to stand up for yourself here. Oh no, is this going to be one of those sorts of posts where you get sort of annoyed at OP because they're not doing anything? Refuses to arrange their own sightseeing and is entirely dependent on my spouse, who I'd like to have around to support me during this stressful time, but do not want to be around the friend, so therefore I don't get my spouse. Lectures my spouse on the politics and social norms of our country, despite the fact that my spouse has lived here for 4 years and knows more than said friend does. The friend is a total social drain to be around and only wants to talk about themselves and their thoughts and complaints. The friend has not once said thank you to us for hosting or driving or paying for their meals. The friend is staying for 13 days total, all with us and all with the expectation of us driving them. No, you need to get rid of them, OP. Say something, please. I have social anxiety, my spouse knows this, and I've had to give up my 2 favorite spaces in the whole house so the friend has to have a place to sleep and a place to hang out when they're not in the bedroom. I work from home and I had to relocate my work setup, previously in the guest room, to another part of the house, which was and is a major inconvenience as work is crazy right now and I'm having to balance taking care of my mum with that. The last 6 days have been hell and I feel like I have no peace in my own home, especially after a long day of having to be social while working and then having to continue that because of the house guest. Yeah, but you're acting like you have no choice, OP. It's your place, get rid of them. Say something, kick them out, get them a bloody hotel or something. Like, hey bro, don't come into our house and be super inconsiderate and super ungrateful. We're doing all this stuff for you and you're not even bloody grateful. Say something like that, you know? The next 6 days will also be hell as this friend simply will not take a hint, and I've got the stress of dealing with my parent who's having a procedure that has a 10% fatality rate, and given her health conditions, complications could happen. Of course, knowing this friend, they probably would not take a hint and then would probably still expect my spouse to drive them places. As it is, my spouse asked if they and the friend should come up to the hospital to visit my mum, to which I said my spouse should, but not if the friend is going to be clinging to them like a sad puppy. I have talked to my spouse and they agree that the friend is a drain. They're not happy either, but they're trying to stick it out until the friend leaves, and they have already said the friend will not be allowed to stay here again. It is clear to me that the friend is massively taking advantage of my spouse, and I hate to see it. I'm just flabbergasted that people like this even exist, as every other house guest we've ever had has been considerate, occupies themselves, arranges their own transportation, and genuinely seems to care about our lives as we care about theirs. This friend is one of the most entitled people I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. Edit, I wanted to clarify a few things. Number 1, I'm not paying for anything for the friend. I put my foot down, my spouse is paying from his own funds. Number 2, I told my spouse that I thought their friend should make an alternative arrangement after I found out about my mum's procedure, and that I was in no place mentally or emotionally to have somebody staying with us. 3, I told my spouse that at the very least, the friend needs to drive themselves, not put all the burden on my spouse, and I really need my spouse to be there to support me at the hospital. I did try to cancel this friend coming here, but it fell on deaf ears. Right, okay, so you did try, so your spouse shouldn't have let this happen. Edit 2, thank you everybody for your responses and tough love. It gave me the courage to finally stand up for myself in the situation rather than just shutting up and taking it. My spouse now better understands how they screwed up and how to fix it. We do have a plan to move forward. Things aren't perfect, but I do feel more optimistic. There will be an update post probably tomorrow of what happened and the fallout. Wow, okay. I'm already excited to read the update. But yeah, good on you, OP, for standing up for yourself. It had to happen. Still though, how unbelievable of the friend. How are these people even real? Imagine staying with somebody, expecting them to drive you everywhere, paying paying for your bloody food, not even saying thank you. Like, they're not even grateful. Why the bloody hell would you want to be friends with somebody like that? And also, why is your spouse putting the friend above you, OP? Like, what does the spouse have to say? I feel like they really dropped the ball on this one. Okay, update. People were asking for an update to this debacle, so here it is. After the original post and seeing the comments, I got even more angry at the situation. I felt very hurt and disappointed by my spouse's inability to put the needs of his spouse above a friend that he rarely sees in person. I felt like I was not the priority and neither was my mum in a very vulnerable time. I simply could not tolerate the situation anymore. The responses did shake some sense into me and made me determined to not be a doormat any longer. Because I was exhausted and I had already told my spouse of my feelings, I essentially gave my spouse the cold shoulder. I avoided interacting with them and the friend. I refused to buy any food even for my spouse. I looked after my mum. I spent lots of my time with her and I made plans. When we did finally talk later that day, I told my spouse that I was getting a hotel room 5 minutes away from the hospital and that I was going to stay there until I felt more comfortable in my own home. If that was several days, so be it. They asked if I was doing it to avoid them. I said no, I was simply done with the stress of the situation and I did not care to be around the friend. By the next morning, I think they finally realized the gravity of the situation and just how upset I was. They offered to help the friend fly home sooner. I said, why is the only option you driving them everywhere or them having to fly home? Are they that incapable that they can't even get a hotel and their own transportation? Spouse mentioned the cost of a hotel, to which I said, I know the friend has money, they can afford it, and why travel to another country if they had no money to pay for accommodation? That's a very good point, OP. I told my spouse that until the friend is gone, I'm staying at a hotel down the road from the hospital. I told my spouse that I felt incredibly hurt and angry that I was not the priority in an extremely stressful time in my life, that spouse did not listen when I told them to tell the friend to make other plans than staying with us, that in trying to keep us both happy, spouse deeply hurt me, their partner in life. I told my spouse that they weren't there for me when I needed them the most and could not be as long as they were catering to the friend. My spouse revealed that they felt backed into a corner with the friend and like they had to keep us both happy. They also revealed that the friend is known for sometimes having tantrums if they don't get their way. Oh my god, they're a baby. I was never told about this until now. Right, so they're ungrateful, they don't pay for anything, they expect everything out of you, they're inconsiderate and they throw tantrums. Are they 11 years old? What a joke. My spouse said they'd talk to the friend about leaving, but still proceeded to drive them all day yesterday out of obligation. My spouse has told me how worried they are about me, but the fact that it took this much talk to get them to realize their mistakes, well, I don't know. My mum's surgery yesterday was a success. Oh yeah, that's good, but it was stressful and it did run longer than planned. I was alone in the waiting room as my siblings are all out of state. It was hard, but I'm relieved that my mum is recovering well, and yeah, I did spend the night in a hotel as promised, as I was drained after the long day. Spouse talked to their friend today and broke the news that they could not continue to drive the friend and that they needed to either fly back sooner or get accommodation elsewhere. My spouse is currently driving the entitled friend to their hotel in another city and is helping them get adjusted by essentially hand-holding them on the transportation options. Spouse is still far too kind for their own good. Friend has yet to say thank you or contribute anything financially for all of the things spouse has done. Spouse said now the friend will be gone, so you can be happy. I don't know if he meant that to guilt trip me, but it kind of felt that way. Except I'm not happy. I'm still disappointed it even took this much for my spouse to do the right thing. I'm still angry and hurt. I am hopeful that we can move past this in our relationship as there is a lot of love and support normally. This situation was just a massive F-up and spouse is remorseful, but I don't know how long it'll take for me to forgive and trust my spouse again to be there for me. I will be talking about it in therapy and I'll likely ask about marital counseling. Something needs to change and my spouse needs to learn when and how to say no. So yeah, that's the update. I may still do another day or two in the hotel to give myself the time and space to recover from a hellish week and a half. This whole experience has taught me to stick up for myself and to not allow others to walk all over me. Thank you, fellow Redditors, for giving me the strength to put my needs above people pleasing. Wow, that was so wild. Yeah, good on you, OP. There's a comment here that says spouse can't be that kind to his own spouse, and OP said he literally said that he was a jerk for what he did when I said he's too kind. I said, no, you're too kind to your entitled friend and you're a jerk to me. And the friend sounds ridiculous. Like, why would you even want to be friends with them? And they're known for throwing tantrums. I nearly fell off my chair when I read that. And it was your spouse's friend, so I guess you didn't want to say much to the friend. So yeah, good on you for what you said to your spouse. I'm happy that somebody in this story could say no. The next one is called Karen once followed me at an airport because I was a lost child. This does probably need context before I start. Both of my parents are divorced and live in two separate states. I live with my mum and grandparents in Nashville, Tennessee, while over school breaks I visit my dad in Rochester, New York. I've flown alone since I was 5, and when I turned 13, my parents said it was okay if I travel without an escort on my layovers, as long as I text them when I'm boarding when I land. Fair enough. This happened when I was 16. Now, I don't look my age and I never have. There's a bad combination in my family. Short jeans and a baby face. I was lucky enough to inherit both. To give you a rough image, I'm a 5 foot tall girl who weighs about 125 pounds. With a baby face, easy for people to mistake me as younger than I am. Well, flying was always the worst offense because I was alone. Karen. I also have bad anxiety and I stutter a lot when I'm nervous, so it only adds to the age confusion more. I was coming back from New York and I had a layover in Baltimore. I decided to get some food at Chipotle. While I was eating at the food court, minding my own business and scrolling on my phone, this middle-aged white blonde woman with her 2 kids walks up to me. We'll just call her Karen. Karen, hi honey, are you okay? Me, yeah, why? Karen, well you seem young and you're by yourself. Oh great, here we go again. This wasn't the first time this has happened, so I calmly told her I was fine and thank you for the concern. Well, apparently Karen didn't like my answer. Her tone soon went from a caring, concerned citizen to a demanding biatch. She told me I wasn't fine because I was a minor by myself and needed adult supervision to fly. She was correct about the minor part, but the supervision part was BS. I was flying Southwest, who allows anybody 12 and older to travel by themselves, but somebody is still supervising you on the flight until you're 15. I did not need adult supervision to be in the airport past security alone, and I told her that. I politely asked her to leave me alone, and I understand the confusion. Karen wasn't having it. Well, why do people need to be like this? Karen, you're lying. Me, how? Karen, I have kids and I know the airport policy about minors. Me, clearly you don't. I've already said that I'm fine. Can you leave me alone? Karen, no. Where are your parents? Me, doesn't matter. Karen, yes it does. I need to complain to them. No way. They said that. At this point, I was getting annoyed. At this point, I'm getting annoyed. I didn't want to tell her about the fact that my parents were divorced, but back then I saw that it was the only way for her to fully understand the situation and leave me alone. Me, ma'am, I'm 16 years old. My mum is in Nashville waiting for me, and my dad is in New York. Neither of them are in this airport, and they both know that I'm by myself, and they're okay about it. I'm allowed to have a layover by myself, and I'm not considered an unaccompanied minor when I'm 16 years old, according to the airline. Now leave me alone. Karen, no, you're lying. Me, how am I lying? Karen, I know you're lying because I have children. I know how rebellious they are, and you're definitely not 16. I was getting mad at this point. For one, what right do you have to tell me how old I am? And secondly, your children look like they're 7 and 5. A little too young to be going through a teenage rebellion. I stood up, I put my food in my bag, and I told her, I think I know how old I am. Karen, where's your proof? I took out my driver's license. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have done that, but I was desperate for her to go away. With not only my birthday, but the fact that I had one in the first place signified that I was 16 or older. I didn't want to show this lady my other information, so I let her see the birthday and nothing more. Karen wasn't going to swallow her pride and walk away. Karen, that still doesn't excuse you from walking around the airport by yourself. How do I know you aren't running away from home? I wanted to tell her that even if I was, it was none of her business. I repeated the Southwest policy to her, and I told her if she still didn't believe me, she could go on their website and check for herself or ask an employee. I then repeated for her to leave me alone or I'd get security. My bluff didn't seem to affect her. She said I wasn't going anywhere and I had to come with her and find my parents. I simply told her no, and I began reaching for my backpack. The Karen grabbed my wrist and started pulling me. I yanked my wrist away, grabbed my backpack, and I started running. At that point, people were watching and her kids seemed distressed, but I didn't care. I made a run for my gate. Now, I'm not very athletic, but I'm definitely faster than this overweight single mum. I eventually made it to my gate and I took a seat at one of the chairs. Still feeling uneasy, I told the lady at the gate what happened and that I was still shaken up. She understood and she said that if she did see a woman matching the description near the gate, she'd make sure that she didn't come near me, and if she did, security would be alerted. Well, turns out my gut was right, and after about an hour, I saw her looking around the different gates. I told the lady and she nodded. She instructed me to get behind the desk as the Karen approached. Here's the conversation. Karen, excuse me, that child behind you is not allowed to be in the airport by herself. She turned to me and she asked me if I was an unaccompanied minor. I answered no. Woman, if she's not an unaccompanied minor, then she can be in the airport by herself. Karen, she's lying. She can't be 16. She showed me a fake ID. Woman, oh really? She turned to me and asked me to see my boarding pass. I gladly handed it to her. She reviewed it and said it looked fine, and then asked me to see what I showed Karen. I gave her my license and she also said it looked fine. Karen demanded the woman at the desk to hand me over to her so she could take me to her gate and find my parents. This scared me. I knew I wasn't going anywhere with this woman, but it didn't stop me from being scared. Woman, ma'am, is this girl your child? Karen, no. Woman, then I'm afraid I can't give her to you. I can assure you she is in good hands. Karen, no she's not, because she's rebellious and lying. I'm clearly more qualified to take care of her considering I have children, and you don't. That did it. At this point, I could feel a panic attack coming on. The nice woman must have noticed this. She told the Karen that either she goes to her gate and leaves me alone, or security will be called. Karen huffed and puffed, saying that the front desk ladyboy didn't know her own airline policies, and she'll be calling 911 for child endangerment, and Southwest was going to be shut down for this. The lady at the desk only nodded. After Karen was done with her rant, she walked away before security could come. Before she left, the lady asked her name so she could file a complaint for her, an obvious lie, and she told her, we'll just keep her name as Karen. The lady at the desk offered to find her gate, informed them of what happened, and made sure she didn't leave her gate to make me feel safer. I agreed, and we found out that her gate was in the international terminal. Knowing that this woman wanted to take me to a completely different terminal, the international terminal no less, made me even more scared, but I was assured sure that everything was going to be alright. Her gate was informed about the situation and they said that they'd make sure that she wouldn't leave the terminal once she got there. It made me feel a lot better. I'm 19 now and I still haven't grown taller. I'm in college now and I still fly by myself. I'm still a little bit shaken up from the whole thing, but I still fly on my own, but I make sure to carry around my ID and passport. And if anybody asks me if I need help, I'd answer no and walk away. That may make me look more suspicious, but I don't care. I'd rather come across rude than have to deal with another crazy Karen. Man, this post was long. Thank you for reading all the way if you did. Yeah, like the top comment says, there's helpful and then there's lunacy. This woman was not being helpful. I do hope that somebody verified that the children with her were her children and that she legally had custody of them. I'm glad the employees helped you, but I wish they'd done more. The local police should have had a serious fear of God talk with Karen, explaining that they're keeping a record of the event. If she did believe a child was in danger, she would have been fine contacting security herself and asking them to make sure everything was okay. Trying to force you to accompany her and pursuing you suggests that her primary concern was her displeasure at you not instantly doing what you wanted and therefore being rebellious. Awful situation. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, OP. Why are people like this? You said so many different times that you were completely fine and they had so many opportunities to just walk away, but they didn't and they kept on going. I'm so glad it wasn't worse than it was, OP. The next one is called I grammar checked somebody's college paper and now he's blaming me for his failure. Since my high school days, I've been correcting some of my friends' papers. I mostly only check the grammar, but I also do some minor adjustments. For instance, I had one friend who didn't understand the concept of paragraphs until college. I'm not a professional by any means, but my work has been good enough that my friends have recommended me to some of their peers. I graduated college in 2019. I'm not a teacher or a student, and I don't charge anybody anything. Whenever I agree to do this, it's purely for fun. However, I have been doing it less and less lately, as I now have an actual job, a husband, and a toddler. Also, almost all of my friends have graduated. One of the exceptions is a friend of mine who recently decided to get a second degree. His class had a pretty big paper to deliver last week, and he recommended my services to a classmate of his. I was put in contact with them. I'll call him Derek, an 18-year-old who, based on our interactions on the phone, seemed like a chill person. In retrospect, I'm pretty sure he was just high. The paper was due last Monday at 7:30, right before the start of their class, and he promised me that he'd send it for me to grammar check it at least 24 hours before. On Monday at 1 a.m, Derek finally sent me the paper. As promised, I swallowed my frustration and I got to work. The paper was 3 pages. As I read it, I noticed that at least half of it was very obviously written by your friend and mine, ChatGPT. It was bad enough that I almost immediately realized the information was wrong. I think the AI confused 2 different people, which derailed much of what came next, even though I only had a basic understanding of what the paper was about. But it was 1 a.m. and the grammar for that half was fine, so I didn't touch it. I only corrected the offensively atrocious grammar that was present everywhere else. I sent him the finished paper about an hour later. He didn't thank me. Derek got his grade back yesterday. His paper was a 2 out of 10, and his teacher apparently told him he was lucky to even get that. His response was to send me a text that said something along the lines of, "What the hell did you do? Weren't you supposed to correct it?" Wow, bro, what? I reminded Derek that I corrected grammatical errors, not information. He'd been informed of that several times by both me and my friend before I agreed to help. He rudely continued to text me that I should have corrected the rest of it anyway. Get out of here, dude. Since I could tell the information was inaccurate. So Derek, who relied on AI to write half of a very important paper, is blaming me for the fact that his teacher saw right through it. And judging by some of his texts, I think he expected me to rewrite parts of his paper. The bloody nerve of this guy. I get it. I was a student once and I don't miss it, but I'd never treat anybody like this, especially somebody who had just done me a favor. I'm seriously considering not doing grammar checks anymore. Yeah, and fair enough too, OP. Why are they so bloody rude? Oh, that's so annoying. That's definitely going to be the last post of the day. I can't handle any more entitled people today. But yeah, that's so unbelievably annoying. Like the nerve of them to send it to you at 1 a.m, expecting you to fix it immediately. And they pretty much expect you to what? Rewrite it when they didn't even write it in the first place because they're so lazy. That's so bad. Entitled people get on our table when we had already reserved it and then get annoyed when they're kicked out. See, that's already frustrating. And we haven't even started reading it. So this happened 2 years ago or so. My parents and I were in Madrid during Easter and were tourists. We had a good morning and my mum decided to call a restaurant that she'd seen on Google that had good reviews so she could reserve a table so we could eat lunch there. It took us around 20 minutes or so to get to the restaurant. And when we got there, we saw that all the tables in the terrace were already occupied. We were confused because my mum had asked to eat in the terrace on the phone call because the weather was nice and since it was a beautiful day, we wanted to enjoy it outside. Apparently, a couple had sat down on our table without even seeing the small sign saying reserved table to get some drinks and a snack. They didn't have any drinks yet though, so they must have just sat down a few seconds before we arrived. The waiter sheepishly asked them to leave since we had reserved the table and the woman scoffed but did end up getting up in a huff. The man approached us, rolled his eyes and said, "Right, this is because you want to eat lunch here and that takes precedence over having some drinks? Right, typical. No, you bloody reserved the table, come on." My mum raised her eyebrows at him him and told him coldly, "No, sir, you're being kicked out because we made a reservation to eat outside on the terrace and you took our spot. I have the phone call to prove it. Do you want to see it?" And she took out her phone ready to show it to him. The man ended up grumbling and going away with the woman. Needless to say, the meal was delicious and the weather was nice. 10 out of 10. Oh, that's so annoying though. Like, hey, this isn't our fault. You stole our table, buddy. The next one is called I Refuse Service to Her Son. Now she's taking it further. I'm a 24-year-old bar manager in a fairly new bar. Coming into my shift on a Friday afternoon, I was warned by another co-worker about a guy who may need cutting off and was too drunk. He then proceeded to stumble to the bar, swaying and slurring his words, requesting some drinks off me. I explained that I wasn't comfortable serving him anymore and he may need to leave. That's when he called Karen. The hair, the attitude, the entitlement, all in one person. She storms over to the bar, this 50-odd-year-old woman requesting the manager, to which unfortunately is me. She stood in my face pointing, "My son is not drunk." I told her that we weren't comfortable serving her son anymore as he was too drunk. Now in a pub, there's somebody for every situation. Fire alarm goes off, you've got firefighters in. Giving advice, somebody is having a seizure. They help their friend with one so they know better. You've got water coming through the ceiling. They're a plumber. This Karen was a bar manager for 30 years and she thinks I shouldn't cut her son off. She was demanding where our point system is. For a moment, I completely forgot whether I'm in school or not. Point system? She responded with, "He's not on drugs." Okay, good start. He's not broken a glass. Sometimes accidents happen. He not started a fight. Okay, so how people should behave in a pub. But he's still too pissed and we've got the right to refusal. Now in the UK, in order to get an alcohol license, you have to take an exam. In that exam, I'd never heard of this point system before. I've heard of 5 licensing objectives and cutting somebody off before getting too drunk is following the objectives. Then she started demanding a piece of paper to write a 3-page complaint on how she wasn't given a reason. Also emailing the brewery about how I treated her son unfairly and that I was in the wrong. She then proceeded threatening me about Steve. "I will tell Steve about this and he'll never step foot in this pub again." Family must have been pure royalty. Celebrities basically, and I didn't get the memo because who the hell is Steve? Anyway, Steve does still drink with us and is lovely. Wow, so they brought their entitled mum in? That's so funny. Yeah, like the top comment says, as a parent myself, I can't imagine going into any place on behalf of my of-age child. They're grown up and they can handle their business themselves. What's that? You're not serving my son drinks anymore? I'll put a stop to this. For how frustrating that situation would have been, it does sound like you handled it pretty well, OP. Like how you didn't laugh at them, I don't know. I feel like I would have burst out laughing. The next one is called Sister-in-law copied my engagement ring, wedding dress, and even the venue and all the details. I don't know if I'm overreacting, y'all, but I really do feel pissed that my sister-in-law copied both my engagement ring and wedding band. Later on, she copied my wedding dress despite a very small detail. Not only that, but also my makeup and my hair. She had her wedding at the same venue I had mine, and even had the same theme and color arrangements. I know that some of you will tell me not to care, or maybe she's just a copycat, but now I feel like I want to upgrade my ring just because I feel pissed. Is this normal? No, I don't feel like that's normal, OP, and it's definitely sad too. Like sad that they couldn't do what they wanted to do, or like felt like they had to copy you, or didn't feel like they had the confidence or something. Yeah, I suppose just take it as a compliment though, OP. The top comment says, "Dear sister-in-law, I'm so flattered that you found all of my wedding arrangements so perfect that you used them yourself. Thank you for valuing my taste and my opinion so much. Shall we go on a makeover trip for you and find some things that'll suit you ever so much better than those did?" And OP said, "Haha, this actually made my day. I really wish I could send her such a text without causing drama." And also this comment, "I wouldn't. Just think of it as her copying you because she obviously can't think for herself and has no imagination of her own. I wouldn't change what you cherish and value. It means everything to you. Trust me when I tell you that you won't be happy with it. If you act like it bothers you, that might possibly be her end goal. Did you ask her why she's trying to copy everything you've done?" And OP said, "No, I didn't. I just attended the wedding and complimented everything, showing zero negative energy." Yeah, that's definitely the right thing to do, OP. Good on you for handling it so well. But yeah, that's super bizarre. The next one is called Am I the Entitled Person? I had to fly to San Diego for work last week at 30-ish weeks pregnant. Bear with me, I know Reddit hates pregnant people, but I really think I handled this one the right way. I was flying American Airlines, and when you book your flight, you pick your seat. I booked a few weeks in advance and I chose the seat that was towards the middle of the plane closest to the bathroom, and I selected an aisle seat. I paid $78 for the seat because it's considered a premium seat due to legroom. My return flight was a red eye, and as I waited at the airport to check the seats for any closer to the restroom, I noticed that the row I selected as well as the one directly across were pretty much empty. Great, I don't mind getting up to move for others on a flight. I usually would take the window seat, but due to being so far into pregnancy, I was advised by my obstetrician to get up every 1 to 2 hours and walk around to avoid the risk of blood clots. She also wanted me to drink a lot of water on the flight, hence the proximity to the bathroom. Because Because of this, I booked an aisle seat, partially for convenience, but also so I wouldn't have to bother or potentially wake sleeping passengers on an 8-hour red eye every 1 to 2 hours because I'm walking around or peeing. Like I said, I paid a fee for this assigned seat, so boarding happens and I said that the flight has filled out a bit, and now there are no empty seats in either row. No issue, I've made the necessary accommodations, and I'm not relying on empty seats or anybody else to do any type of switch, so this doesn't impact me at all. If people need to get up and move, great. A reminder for me to get some steps in. I'm sitting in my seat and the woman who'll be taking the window seat boards and we chat a bit, and she says not to worry, she won't be a bother getting up and down as she plans to sleep, and I tell her not to worry. If she does need to get up, she won't be bothering me, and I tell her I have to get up and walk anyway. Towards the end of boarding, a very, very tall man comes up and he's in the aisle helping a woman who's in the aisle seat next to mine, but like across the aisle, if that makes sense, to put her bag in the overhead bin. At this point, I do have my AirPods in, but I'm on alert as I'm aware that there's somebody in the middle seat and I'll have to get up and let them in. It becomes apparent that this man has the middle seat in the row while his wife has the aisle seat next to mine, so I'm essentially sat right in between them. I pull out my headphone and I offer to switch aisle seats so they can sit next to each other. There is a bit of a language barrier and she does gesture next to her at a boy, maybe 8 to 10 years old, and says that this is her son and she doesn't want to leave him alone in the row. So I nod and say, okay, totally makes sense, and I stand to let her husband into the middle seat. Here's where I was called entitled. The man asked me to switch with him so he can sit next to his wife. Thinking maybe it didn't register to him that I'm pregnant, I jokingly gestured to my very obvious bump and explained the bathroom and the frequent walks. He said that he doesn't mind, he'll get up. I said, no, I'm sorry, I paid for the aisle seat so that I'd be able to get up and move freely as needed during the whole flight and not have to disturb anybody. He again insisted that he needed to be able to sit with his wife and child, and I suggested they speak to the flight attendant about moving seats. The flight attendant obviously didn't have much of a solution for them, so they spent the entire flight leaning across me to talk to one another, passing drinks and snacks across my lap, blocking my laptop screen, and getting up and down frequently to make me suffer. Fine, whatever, doesn't bother me. However, when there started to be a frequency of elbows to my baby bump during their discussions, I let the flight attendant know what was going on, and they were told to stop reaching across me. My husband says I was entitled and playing the pregnancy card. Is he right? Nah, OP. Definitely not. The other people on the flight were being super rude, and your husband should be annoyed at how they treated you, OP. Not saying that you were being entitled, like reaching over you so you can't even focus on what you're doing, and elbowing you in the stomach. Nah, you're not the one in the wrong, OP. Yeah, like this comment says, not the a-hole. You planned ahead and paid for the specific seat that you needed. Just because they weren't bright enough to do the same to get seats next to each other is not your problem. They were trying to make it your problem, but it 100% was theirs, not yours. The next one is called Woman Wants to Call the CEO for not returning a chicken. I work as a primary cashier at a grocery store that caters to alternative diets. I have posted about entitled customers before, but this woman still left me in awe. Sometimes when people have returns, they'll approach the register first with their item to make sure the return is allowed, and then complete it when they check out. This isn't a problem, but it did give us a heads up for what was about to come. Out of nowhere, my boss approached me and warned me about a woman that wanted a refund on a chicken. We can't do refunds on perishable foods after they leave the store due to possible dangerous items inserted into the food, and there's no way to know if spoiled food is the customer's fault, such as not refrigerating milk and it's a 2-hour drive home. This policy is printed on every receipt and on the store's website, so if you ask anybody, you'll be told the policy. So of course she was told no, but my boss told me about it before going back to stocking a short ways away. Not even 5 minutes after the lady comes up, the checking out proceeds as normal, and before ringing her up, the event starts. Woman, so for the chicken. Oh yes, the chicken. I was told, and unfortunately we can't take it back due to our policy. Woman, why? I bought it here. Me, do you have the receipt? Every answer was going to be a no, but I planned to show her the written policy, and I was mildly curious about the chicken. Woman, no, I don't. Me, okay, do you know when you got it? Woman, no, a while ago. Me, do you have the chicken with you? Woman, no, it's cooked at home. Me, okay, well you wouldn't be able to return it without any of that anyway. Woman, but why? I bought it here. I brought it home and it smelt weird after I cooked it. You would expect me to eat it? Me looking at the boss nearby, would you like to speak to the manager? I spoke a bit louder so she would hear me. I wasn't about to subject myself to a stupid argument. I thought they would move off to the side or step away, but no. The woman dug her feet in at my register to start arguing with my boss. I called another cashier up to take over while my register was occupied, and I grabbed my popcorn. Woman, I bought a chicken here and it smelled funny when I cooked it. I want a refund. Boss, I'm sorry, but our policy says that we can't return perishable foods after they leave the store. Woman, but it smelled funny. What if it was poisoned? Would you tell me to feed my family poison? Boss, it's our policy, ma'am. I wish there was something I could do, but it's a safety risk. Woman, I'm incredibly disappointed in this store. I've been coming here for years and this is how you treat your loyal customers. What if it was you that cooked the chicken? You popped my bubble. You really burst my bubble about this store? I thought you cared about people here. Boss, I'm sorry you feel that way, but my hands are tied. We can't take it back after you leave the store with it and cook it. There's no way of knowing. I'm not saying anything against you, but it could be a fine chicken and your sense of smell is different. Woman, no, that's not true. I've been getting chickens here for years. I didn't even eat it. It smelled fine when I brought it home, but it smelled off when I cooked it. I told my family not to eat it. Boss, how long ago did you cook it? Woman, a few days ago. It's still at home. Boss, ma'am, I can't do anything about that. I'm sorry. Woman, this is unbelievable. I should never come back for this. You're crushing my heart. I've never been so disappointed. Who's your boss? I want to speak to headquarters. Boss, they're in another state. I can get you the number. Woman, do that. This is despicable of this location. My boss stepped away to get the phone number, leaving me alone with the woman. She shook her head when she looked at me and continued to pay for her transaction. Woman, you hear that? Unbelievable. I'd never treat people like this. If I were you, I wouldn't do this. Do you think it's fair? Me, sadly, it's our policy. Nobody here can do anything about it. I'm just a cashier. Woman, I know, but if you could, you would have given me a refund because it's the right thing to do. Me, right. My boss came back and handed her a paper with a phone number. She gathered her groceries and left without another word. I wish I could be a fly on the wall for a phone call to the CEO about a woman that couldn't return a $9 chicken. Yeah, that's so funny, and that was entertaining enough to read about, let alone you working there and actually seeing it firsthand. Like, yeah, infuriating but also entertaining at the same time. And yeah, all of that over a chicken. That's so funny and annoying at the same time. The next one is called Prick Gets His Car Scratched After Parking It Illegally. I worked at a car rental place that had a car wash next door. They were owned by the same guy though. The car wash was essentially a side hustle with the bonus of it being able to clean rental cars. As such, we constantly drove in and out of the two lots. The gap between the two driveways was just big enough to fit a car, so it was a tight turn. Made even tighter if there was a car parked there. After discussing this with the city council, they agreed to paint the curb between the two driveways yellow to make it illegal to park there. Of course, people still park there though. One day, a guy with one of those obnoxiously large Fords parked there. The type of car that you see taking up multiple parks at a mall. The type of car that has an owner with a big ego and a short temper. On that day, we had to clean a bus for a family on their way from the airport. They were ahead of schedule, so we had to move fast. One of my colleagues did his best to navigate around the Ford, but he couldn't, and he scraped a huge gash into the panel above a tire. The owner flipped out. We tried telling him that he shouldn't have parked it there. It's illegal, but he still didn't care. He has a big expensive car, so he's allowed to park anywhere he wants to, and he chose there so he was away from other people, reducing risk of damage. That didn't work out for him though, did it? He demanded compensation, but we refused, so he took it to court. Thankfully, he lost. The curb was yellow, so he shouldn't have even parked there. He was ruled completely at fault. Right, okay, but like, why did your colleague just keep on driving? That's what I'm the most confused about. It said that one of my colleagues did his best to navigate around the Ford, but he couldn't, and he scraped a huge gash into the panel above a tire. Why would you not stop and go and find the owner? I don't understand that bit. Like, don't just continue and run into the car. I'm assuming it was an accident, right? Because the way that was worded makes it sound like the colleague knew that he couldn't make it through, but he just kept going anyway. And also, was it in the customer's bus they were talking about? Or was it like your colleague's car or something? Yeah, I don't know. This one's really confusing. But yeah, they shouldn't have been parked there. I'm just hoping that your colleague didn't knowingly scrape their car. And I feel like that's enough for today. Definitely time to read something wholesome. But yeah, don't park where you're not allowed to. Go easy on yourself. You're doing great. This is just really hard. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so good to remember that too. You notice how some of the letters are filled in and the other ones aren't? I've been looking at this trying to see if it spells something, and it definitely doesn't. Last year my son said he wanted to take ballet, but that boys can't do ballet, and thus began several months of conversations to give him the confidence to take his first lesson. Tonight he goes on stage with a major ballet company to perform the Nutcracker. I am proud AF. Wow, that's so beautiful. Hell yeah, OP. That's so awesome. And good on your son for doing it too. What a legend. My dad couldn't find Google Chrome, so I did this. Wow, that's so smart. That's such a good idea. Surely your dad thought that was so funny. Important, a single act of kindness is enough to make somebody's day. Yeah, how true is that? It really doesn't take much. The top comment says, be the light. Yeah, definitely. And on that beautiful note, thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful time, and I hope that wasn't too infuriating. If you enjoyed and you want to see more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe. And the comment of the day goes to Savannah. I was listening to the Am I the Gay Hole playlist when my grandma came into the room to do her computer work. She started listening too, even commenting at times. It made me laugh when after a few videos she said bye when Vincey did at the end of the video. Wow, that's so cute. Oh, that's so beautiful. See, like that made my day. Like the last wholesome meme. All it took to make my day was to read this comment. That's so awesome. Say hello to your grandma for me. And thank you for the support. That's so awesome. I have thought about not saying bye at the end of my videos, but I definitely definitely can't stop now. Okay, I'm out of here. Thank you for all the support, guys. Make sure you look after yourself and make sure you have a beautiful, amazing rest of your day. And you know what I'm about to say because I say it every single day. Bye!